challenge, our last section, is funding this. I don't know about you, but as I study current events, I'm not so convinced that in decades to come, with the demographic pressures of being in such a large generation, that the government's going to have a huge amount of surplus to give us. By the way, I'm also not convinced, as I see the strain being put onto corporations by their retiree populations and costs, that we're going to see corporations having a huge amount of largesse to distribute. They may be there, but I think the ice will be thin, not thick. And so increasingly I'm coming to realize that if I want to enjoy myself or feel a sense of power or feel secure in my 7th or 8th or 9th decade of life, I might have to give myself a good old-fashioned wake-up call and see to it that I'm taking the steps necessary to fund that future. Here's a model. I think in the past life was a bit like a lake. You had so many years, you could see to the other side, you had your boat. If you had enough provisions, you could kind of row and get there. Maybe some of you have noticed, for us, life isn't like a lake. It's like a twisting, turning river. We don't even know how long it is. Frankly, most of us don't even know what's around the bend. Most of us haven't really thought about what's up ahead. We don't know how to prepare. We're not even sure the best way to navigate it. So what we're going to take a few minutes to do now is to take a look what's up ahead in our rivers and also think about how can we either use information or a professional advisor to be our guides. And by the way, you got to also remember not to fall off the cliff at any point. It's not just a matter of getting prepared, it's a matter of staying on a journey. One of the parts of adult life for which some preparation, not just the having of the kids, has to do with college tuition. It's escalating in cost. Is that the kind of thing you want to start on the day before or maybe 15 years before? And are there certain financial products that might be better ones for that kind of use? What about boomerang kids? You know, back in the 1970s, there was a certain sort of pride in leaving home and never coming back. Kids today are a little smarter than that. They leave and then they figure, gee, when I was at home, there was TiVo and Mom did the laundry and maybe I'll move back for a while. Has it occurred to you that one or several of your children might either move back in or need for you to pick up their bills? Are you prepared for that? What about wellness and illness? Biggest fear among the boomer generation about their aging process is illness. And can they afford it? Last year, half of all the bankruptcies in America were triggered by a health event where a person found themselves unable to work. Or, in some cases worse, they found themselves in a health event and then they had all these bills that were not covered by their insurance or a government program. And next thing they know, they're writing checks out of pocket, knocks them out. Have you thought about how much do you need to save or what kind of protections you ought to have in place in case you find yourself or a loved one finds themselves experiencing that kind of circumstance? What about career interruption? Average boomer today is more likely to lose their job this year than their life. How long could you go if you lost your job? What if it took 9 months to find a new job? What if you took a job on your next go-around that didn't pay as much? Do you have the willingness to adjust your lifestyle? Do you have enough saved? Have you taken full advantage of investing and saving opportunities to be able to fund that likely circumstance? Do you know that the average boomer actually has more parents than children? And most people haven't stopped to say, well, do mom and dad have long-term care insurance? Because if they don't, and they find themselves with a chronic disease or come back from a surgery and Medicare doesn't pay for that, that's your inheritance that's going to be spent down. And maybe we ought to think about, even in our 30s or 40s or 50s, the right kind of protection for long-term care kinds of problems so that we don't find ourselves being knocked out by this issue downstream. People envision the future, they usually envision a kind of a Jetsons future. Young people with skin-tight outfits and cool rocket ships. This is not the immediate future, but I actually, if I click this device, I can show you the future if you think you're ready. Anybody ready? Here we go. The gal in the blue dress is Sarah Knaus. She's 118. Sitting next to her is her daughter, Kitty. Kitty's 95. Standing up in the back is her grandson, Bob. He's 73. To the right of Bob is Kathy. She's the 49-year-old great-granddaughter. Christina is the 27-year-old great-great-granddaughter. And little Bradley makes up the 6th-generation Knaus. This is the future. 4, 5, 6th-generation families. Looking out for each other. You might go skiing with your grandchildren. You might develop a best friendship with one of your great-grandchildren. You might know your grandfather in ways that people never could know their grandparents in the past. Singlehood. It's about 20 million singles over the age of 50. 2/3 of them are women. And it's partly because women live longer than men. But men, I'm going to upset you a little bit here. These new modern women, when we pass away, they go through a period of very deep grief and bereavement for about 1.5 years. And at the end of the day, we might kind of ask, well, what could I be at 75? This gentleman was 75 when his picture was taken, and so was this. And I would have to tell you that whether it's the idea of being physically vital at 75 or intellectually alive or being a leader in your community rather than somebody living at the margin, I think the boomers, we're all beginning to dream up, who could we be? Who could I be? What's next for me?